Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to talk about all the books I've read so far this month. So I've read 7 books, or I finished 7 books so far, so I'm doing pretty well. And I have finished a book that I've been reading for 76 days. So let's start with that one because I'm gonna talk about my least favorite working up to my favorite. So my least favorite so far, unfortunately, is Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. So I gave this one 3.5 stars, and it's precisely because it took me so long to read. So this is part 2 in the first duology of Boys of Tommen. So this is Shannon and Johnny's second book. And this book on its own is 641 pages. And this is the second part to one story. So in total, Shannon and Johnny's story has over 1,200 pages, and I think that is what prevented me from really loving this book. So I read Binding 13. So let me actually tell you. So Binding 13 and Keeping 13 are about Johnny and Shannon. And Johnny is this rugby prodigy. All he thinks about is rugby. He's 17, and his only goal in life is to get drafted into the Irish Rugby League, or like become part of the Irish national team. He has a pretty good home life. Like, his parents really love him. He's an only child. They're pretty well off. And Shannon is the exact opposite of that. Her parents are very neglectful. Her father is an alcoholic. He's abusive as well. She just has a very sucky home life. And at school, in her previous school, she got bullied very heavily. So her mom decides to enroll her into Tommen University, which is a private school. So it's very expensive, and they can't really afford it. But her mom, even though she has her flaws, she does want her daughter to be safe at school. So there, Shannon and Johnny meet and they fall in love. But of course, Shannon still has everything going on in her home life. She's not very honest about that to Johnny. And Johnny, especially in the first book, is really trying to figure out what is going on with her life and what's going on with her home life. And all he wants to do is save her from that. And I really enjoyed Binding 13. I actually read it for my vlog of reading Booktube's favorite romances of 2023, which I'll leave linked for you. Like I said, I really enjoyed it, but I ended up giving that book 4.5 stars because it already felt way too long. And in that book, they were really trying to figure out what they were going to do about their relationship. And even though there were some repetitive scenes, I still was intrigued by the plot enough to fall in love with it. Whereas in this book, yes, there are still some things that need to be figured out, but Shannon and Johnny are a solid couple in this book. Like, yes, there are things about the future that are murky, and yes, her family is still not really a big fan of his, but they are a pretty solid couple. And in my opinion, this did not need to be this long. Like, if you wanted a very long book about 2 characters, I think they should have had 800 pages max. So maybe still have a duology, but have the first book be 400 pages, have this book be 400 pages. But for me, 1,200 pages, it was just way too long, which is why this got 3.5 stars. I did still love the couple, and I still did love the side characters. And there were some things that happened here that were both heartbreaking, but also how it was resolved was very heartwarming. And I'm very interested to read Joey's books. So the 3rd and 4th book are about Shannon's brother, Joey. And I usually, as much as Shannon broke my heart, usually the books that have tortured heroes in them are my favorite. And in this case, Johnny was not tortured. It was definitely Shannon who was tortured. And even though she had a horrible home life, I know that she was spared some things because Joey took on a lot. So I just cannot imagine his books. Yeah, I do think that out of all of them, Joey's books are going to be my favorite. And having said all that, I would give Johnny and Shannon's story, so the first duology, I would give it a solid 4 stars. I would highly recommend it still. I do enjoy Chloe's writing style. She has a very addictive writing style, almost like fan fiction-y, how you cannot stop reading those. And the fact that it was also very long also kind of reminded me of fan fiction a little bit, which is not to say that that is bad at all. Because at the end of the day, even though it did feel too long, after I finished this book, I was in London when I finished it. And the first 3 days after I finished it, I woke up and the first thing I thought about was Johnny and Shannon. And that, I know that the reason why that is because I spent 1,200 pages with them. I guess the upside of having such a long book is that these characters will burrow into your heart and never let you go, because I still think about them randomly. And that is because I've had so many pages of being with them. I will be saving Six. I will not be picking up Saving Six for a while, I don't think, because I know it's just gonna break my heart. So I'm gonna give myself a couple months before I pick Saving and Redeeming Six up. But I will continue on with this series because I truly understand why a lot of people love it. So I rated this on its own, but overall, I did really fall in love with their story. And I think if this was a little bit shorter, this would have been 5 star. Like this and Binding 13 both would have been 5 stars, and these would have been one of my favorite books of all time. But maybe Joey's duology will be that. Moving on to the 4-star books. My first 4-star was Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. So this is the second and final book in her King of Scars duology. I actually did an entire non-spoiler reading vlog reading the King of Scars duology for my Booktube Rewind series. So I'll leave that linked for you. This is the second book, so I cannot tell you a whole lot about it. This duology, you follow Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina. And this follows events from both the Shadow and Bone trilogy and also the Six of Crows duology. Especially if the first book, you barely see any Six of Crows characters, except for Nina, of course. But in this book, you actually do see more Six of Crows characters. But these books do feel like a continuation of the Shadow and Bone series. I cannot really tell you a whole lot about the plot because I don't want to spoil things from those two series. I do have to say, as I said in my vlog, do I think this duology is necessary? I don't think so, honestly. I think you can just read the Six of Crows duology and the Shadow and Bone trilogy and have a fulfilling story arc, unless you really, really love any of the 3 characters I just mentioned. Although I do have to say, Nina I liked significantly less in this duology, which, if you want to know why, check out that video I talked about, check out that vlog, and then skip to the end because I have a section where I spoil the Six of Crows duology. So if you've read the Six of Crows duology, you really love Nina in that duology, then and you're wondering whether or not you should pick this up, I would say watch that part of the vlog first. Nikolai is as great as he's ever been. I really loved him. I really loved his love story with Zoya as well. So yeah, 4 stars. I liked reading it, but I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time thinking about this duology. And I do think that when I'm gonna reread the other 2 series, I don't think I'm gonna pick this up. So there's that. My other 4-star read was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. So this is the first book in her new series. I forget the name of that series. Saga of the Unfated. And you follow a woman named Freya who's in a very sucky marriage to a man who's just the worst. He ends up betraying her because she... Okay, so in this world you have people who are blessed by the gods, and everybody else is fated. So basically everything they're going to do in their life is set in stone, and the only ones who are unfated are the people who are blessed by the gods. And there was this prophecy years ago of this shield maiden, and the person who controlled her would be king. Freya is this shield maiden, and when her father found out that she was that shield maiden, he told her that she could never tell anybody, and he made her brother promise, and he wanted to keep her safe. But then her husband, one day following her, realizes what she is. So he betrays her to this king in their land, and he marries her to control her so that he can become king of like the whole land. But she ends up falling for his son, Bjorn. So, okay, so the first thing I need to say is it's funny because it's a funny thing, but it kind of bothered me. The king who I'm talking about, so her husband, his name is Snorri, I don't know. But snor means mustache in Dutch. And I just could not take this man seriously because for me, every time I read it, I was reading mustachy, even though I don't know, I just could not take this man seriously. And another thing that bothered me was the romance a little bit. I didn't really believe in their romance. Like I couldn't really understand why they fell in love. And while I was writing my review on Goodreads, I was debating and thinking like, why could that be? Because I really, really love the romance in the Bridge Kingdom. And then I think I realized what the problem was. The Bridge Kingdom was dual point of view, so you really got to see Aaron's perspective. Whereas this book is single point of view. You only get Freya's story. I didn't really understand why Bjorn fell in love with her. I guess I could see why she fell in love with him. But even that wasn't that fully fleshed out. Having said all that, I do enjoy Danielle L. Jensen's writing style. Like, I really love her fantasy world. I love the world she created here as well. I loved all the different gods. I love the Norse mythology woven in. I loved the Viking aspect of this story. And I was intrigued. Like, I kept flipping the pages and I wanted to know what was going on, except obviously this is a fantasy romance. So in order for me to really love a book like this, I have to love the romance just as much as I love the plot. And that just wasn't the case in this one. I don't know if this is going to be a duology. I think it will, because it's obvious that there's more to her story. I was a little bit confused on her and what was going on with her and her reactions to things. It was explained. I just want to know more. And I think there's more of an explanation. So I just feel a little bit unfulfilled about what was going on with her exactly. But I do think that we're going to get that explanation in the second book. Overall, I would recommend it. It is a solid fantasy romance. It just isn't my favorite. I felt similarly to this one as I did Serpent and the Wings of Night. So if you really loved Serpent and the Wings of Night, I think you're gonna love this one, because the things that bothered me in the Serpent and the Wings of Night bother me in this book as well. But the way they both leave off makes me very, very intrigued about the second books in both of them. So, and there was this thing going on. There was a mystery here, and I saw from a mile away what was going on. So that also didn't really help, like me giving it 5 stars. So 4 stars, like I said, a solid read, and I would recommend it, but it's just not my favorite. I had 4 5 stars this month so far, so I've been having a very good reading month. My first 2 4 stars are the 4th and 5th book in the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. So I'm talking about All the Lies and Paint It All Red. I cannot tell you a whole lot about these two because obviously they're the 4th and 5th book in a series. So I'm just going to tell you about the series as a whole. I really, really fell in love with this series. Basically, the Mindfuck series, for those of you who don't know, you follow this serial killer named Lana, and she falls in love with an FBI agent that is on her case. And it's a series of novellas, so every book is about, it's a little over 100 pages. So overall, I believe the total pages for this entire series is over 600 pages. And each novella ends with a giant cliffhanger. So she's a serial killer because she's getting revenge for something horrifying that happened in her past. It's her navigating her revenge, but also falling in love with a very good man. I binged the rest of this series. I read the first book in January, and then it took me a couple months before I continued on. And I do feel like if I had continued on in January, I would have definitely finished it in January as well. I gave the first book 4 stars, but the second, third, fourth, and fifth one, I all gave them 5 stars. Overall, this series is a 5 star for me. This will definitely make an appearance in my favorite books of 2024. I really fell in love with this series. I do have to say it did give me some nightmares because I was like so absorbed in the story. Like I just was so angry, and like I felt every single emotion while reading this book. I just could not stop thinking about this book. I rarely talk about the books I read with my coworkers, for example. They know I read, and sometimes if they want to talk about books, they know they can come to me. But I rarely really talk about books I'm currently reading with coworkers, whereas with this book, I just could not stop. I just kept constantly talking about it because I was so obsessed with this series. I really fell in love with Lana in this book. She's such a great female main character. Like she was so awesome. And Logan was just perfection. He was amazing. So honestly, if you've not read this series, I would highly, highly recommend it. It is a thriller and a romance. So if you are squeamish, I would say don't read it because it is pretty graphic and she goes into detail, both what Lana does to get her revenge, which is very, very brutal and graphic, but also at one point you do get to see everything that happened to her, and that is very, very graphic and very horrifying as well. This to me felt like a TV show. Like I could really, first of all, I cannot understand why this has not been turned into a TV show yet, because I think this would be very, very popular. Also, like it read like a TV show in my mind. Like I just, like this felt like TV show episodes, and it was like a mini series of 5 episodes. It was so good. So like I said, I know this is very popular on Booktube, so I do feel like a lot of you have already read it, but for those select few who have not, I would say definitely do, because I don't think you'll regret it. And I would recommend, if you read the first book, just continue on with the second one, because after that you'll be unable to stop. And I would say just see it as one book, because that is how I'm going to talk about it after this video. I just see it as one full story and one contained book. Then my last 2 5 stars are books that are anticipated releases for me. They're very new releases. I talked about both of them in one of my new releases vlog, which once again I'll leave linked for you. The first one is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. So this is Abby's newest release, and this is technically not part of her Part of Your World series, but I would say it does really fit in well, because a lot of people from the Part of Your World duology make an appearance here. So I would say if you've read this one and you want to know more, read the Part of Your World duology. But if you really love the Part of Your World duology, please read this, because you're going to see your favorites here again. This book you follow Justin and Emma, and Justin writes this post on Reddit where he talks about how he is the man his exes date before they find the love of their lives. And that has happened a lot of times, so it's almost like a curse. And Emma sees that and responds to him saying that she has the exact same thing. Every time she dates somebody, the next person they meet will be the love of their lives. So they come up with this plan to break their curses by dating each other and breaking up, because if the curse holds true, that means the next person they both date will be the love of their lives. She's a traveling nurse, and she decides to have the next like nursing position be where he lives, so they can date and they can ultimately break up. But of course, they end up falling in love. They both have some things in their lives that are bad and sad. So his dad passed away, and because of that, his mom did some embezzling and she has to go to jail now. But he has 3 younger siblings, so he will be their guardian while his mom is in prison. While you start this book, his mom hasn't gone to prison yet, so he has to come to terms with the fact that he's going to be like a single dad almost to his siblings. She has this mom who's very flaky, who abandoned her, who just was neglectful, and her mom just like leaves her and then comes back, leaves her and comes back. Usually when she needs money, she comes back, and because of that, she has had some pretty big traumas, and because of that, she's the person she is right now. She never really lets anybody close. She has some form of anxiety. She's never really settled down with a man, so they have to navigate that as well as what they want to do with their relationships. This is my favorite Abby Jimenez by far. It's a 5 star. It's my first 5 star by her. Her books I just fly through, and her books are also very funny. But with the other 2, there were just some things that prevented me from giving it 5 stars. This one, however, is definitely a 5 star. I really fell in love with both of them, but especially Justin. He was such a good guy. He was he was the definition of a good guy. And her, I just felt so sorry for her. I love the side characters in here as well. And like I said, you do get to see characters, both the characters you love, but also some characters that you hate in this book. I would say if you finish it, so at the end there's this Q&A with Abby, I would say definitely read that, because it will shed light on some things in this book. Yeah, I really fell in love with it. I do have to say, Abby Jimenez, even though it is a romance in my opinion, both characters have a lot going on in their personal lives as well. So I would say it's like a mix between a romance and a contemporary fiction. But at the end of the day, it is a romance because it does have an HEA, and a big part of it is about them and them being together. I really love the side characters as well. I loved his siblings, and I loved her best friend. I would highly recommend it. And I think you can read this without having read her Part of Your World duology, but if you want the full experience, I would say read those 2 first and then read this one. But you don't have to, like I said. This made me really want to go back and read her first series, although I do know that the first book is not a lot of people's favorites, but I have heard amazing things about the second one, so yeah, I should definitely read those. And last but most certainly not least is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. So this is the first book in her newest series, and you follow Ford Grant, who, if you've read the Chestnut Spring series, is Willa's brother, and you follow Rosie. They grew up together. he used to spend his summers in Rose Hill, and Rosie's brother is his best friend, so this is best friend's little sister or brother's best friend romance. And they used to always bicker all the time. Then she left to go like to be the city girl and to figure out her life, but while at work her boss gropes her and she tells him that she's going to go to HR, but he gets there first and he gets her fired. So now she really doesn't know what to do with her life. She realizes that she is in a relationship that is not fulfilling and she doesn't really love him. So she goes back to Rose Hill, and there she meets Ford again because he has settled down in Rose Hill as well. His father is famous and like he's a billionaire, so he had this bar that Willa actually used to work at, but he also set up this Spotify type thing in his past. But he did have a lot of betrayals, and he realizes that the only people that he trusts are like the people from the small town of Rose Hill. So he's setting up a recording studio there where he wants to pay his artists a fair wage. So when she gets there, she's in need of a job, so she asks him for one, or basically demands one, and he gives her one because he has been pining for her all these years. So even though they were bickering, it was kind of his way of not really revealing his feelings, and he has just been pining for her for 10 years. But then a little girl shows up, like a 12-year-old girl, who tells him that he's her biological father. So basically when he was 19, he wanted to go to this concert, but his father, even though he obviously had the money, wanted him to work for it, and instead he took the easy way out and he donated his sperm for $100, and this is basically the product of that. Her father passed away a couple years ago, and now her mom is depressed. And even though her mom really loves her, she can't really take care of her. So she shows up at Ford's doorstep and asks him to kind of take care of her. So he does, and he ends up falling in love with her. Her name is Cora, and Rosie falls in love with her as well. While they're working together, Rosie and Ford do enter a relationship, but there's obviously some hurdles because obviously he's her boss now, and after what happened at her previous job, he's reluctant to start something with her. And also, they're going to be in each other's lives forever because obviously her brother is his best friend and they're sticking around. But this is just quintessential Elsie Silver. I really loved it. It was both sweet and hot. I just really loved it. I love the side characters already. I do believe that almost everybody that's going to have a romance has been introduced. And I did love this take on a single dad book. Yeah, I really loved it. I fell in love with it. And if you want to know more of my full thoughts, definitely check out the vlog I did where I also talked about Just for the Summer. So like I said, I had a very good reading month so far. 4 of the 7 books were 5 stars. I didn't have anything below a 3.5. So hopefully the rest of the month will be just as great. Yeah, I'm currently actually reading Lore of the Wilds, which it doesn't have its just jacket. I'll just have a picture here because I really love this cover so much. But I am enjoying it. Hopefully I can finish it today. It's not that long. And yeah, I would really love to know if you've read some of the books that I read and what were your thoughts. Also, what was your favorite book that you read this month? So far, it's a tie for me between these two, Wild Love and Just for the Summer. Definitely let me know all your thoughts down below. And if you don't want to leave a comment, leave me a pink heart emoji. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.